Hello, and welcome to Aging Matters, a program featuring individuals who talk about aging issues of interest to older adults and their families. I'm Cheryl Beversdorf, your host. Today, I'm pleased to share another episode of Aging Matters Stories of Life, programs featuring guests whose life experiences made a difference to them and to their community. Today, my guest is Albert Coia. Albert is a native of Scotland and a U.S. citizen. For the past 4 decades, he has entertained audiences in the D.C. area with his skills as an actor and a comedian. Albert will talk about his acting career both in the United Kingdom and the U.S., with special emphasis on the characters he has played and performances he has directed with the British players in Washington, D.C. He'll also discuss his acting and director experiences with other local professional and community theater groups. So welcome, Albert, and thank you for joining me today.
Good morning, Cheryl. Welcome. Thank you.
All right, well, Albert, it's always good to start from the beginning. So, where were you born and raised, and talk about your early years?
Well, I was born in Glasgow in Scotland in 1948, so gives you my age. I grew up in public housing in Glasgow. Unfortunately, I lost my father when I was 8, and so my mother had to raise 5 of us on her own, which was very tough on her, and meant things were difficult for her. But I went to school. I went to the local Catholic church and started theatre with that church, just because our music teacher decided a class should do theatre and singing and what have you. I left school at 16 because I had to go to work. I mean, I was on my own by then. My mother had been placed in a nursing home because she'd had a couple of strokes. So, and my brothers and sisters had married or moved away. So I had to rent an apartment on my own at 16 and get a job and do what I had to do. So, not complaining, it was life and you just got on with it. So, and I think it was a good experience and helped me as I grew up. Yeah.
I wanted to back up just a little bit. Wes, as you were growing up, where did you attend school? And how many years were you in the school that you attended, or were there different
Well,
schools? What was
we
that?
had a school attached to the church. It's called St Mungo's. St Mungo's is the patron saint of Glasgow. So my school was called after him. Um, and I went to their infant school, then I went to their primary school, then I went to the middle school, and then I went to what they called the academy, which was, junior high, I guess you would call it here. So I was there from age of 6 to the age of 16. So all the way through in the same place. So, and it was within walking distance of my home. So.
All right. Well, and then we want to start learning about acting. When did you actually start acting, and were there any particular productions that you
I
starred
was
in,
probably
or
14, 13 or 14. It's when I was in the primary, not primary school, in the middle school. We had a music teacher by the name of Sheepshank, if you can believe that or not. That was his name. And, he taught us music and singing and acting. And there was a local church group, St. Mungo's Church had a local theatre group. So he encouraged us to join it. So, at 13, 14, I joined, and we did lots of what we call pantomime, British pantomime, which is a Christmas type show based on fairy tales. And also some religious plays. We did religious plays because it was attached to a church. And I did, I played adult roles along with all the others. We were in our teens. We had a very nice Irish lady, Mrs. Gagan, who was the director and runner of she was brilliant. She just was great. And she taught me everything I know about theatre. I think I learned from Mrs. Gagan. She was just wonderful. In pantomimes, I played many, many roles. The biggest one I had was I played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. And that was one of my favorite shows. The only problem was I had to wear this cardboard outfit that was painted gray, and it was not comfortable to perform in, but you did what you had to do. So
And that's actually kind of surprises me, given that, and this was still when you were in the UK, correct?
Oh yes, this is still when I was a teenager, yeah. And I did it all the way through till I guess I was 20 when I first came to the US. I came in 1968 to visit my sister, yeah, because I had looked at, she had moved here, my eldest sister, and I'd looked after my mother. So she felt she owed me something for the fact that I had stayed and looked after mother. So she gave me a vacation here in the US in DC in 1968. And that's how I first came. So.
And I just wanted to back up a bit, Albert. Where did you work at all before you came to the United States in the UK? Did you have an occupation?
Well, in the UK, I worked mainly in local government. I worked for the Glasgow City Housing Department. I was a timekeeper cost clerk. That was what I did for my living. I also worked for a little while for what was called the National Health Service, or is called the National Health Service, processing people's claims to have their health costs paid. So those are the two main jobs I had in the UK. And of course, they were day jobs, so gave me the evening to do theatre and the weekends to do theatres. And that's what I did for the last 4 years that I lived in Glasgow.
And so, what year did you come to the United States?
I came to visit for 3 weeks in 1968, but then my mother died at the end of that year. And by then, well, when I was here on vacation, my sister introduced me to several people she knew, and one gentleman said, well, if you come back, I'll give you a job. So when my mother passed away, my sister said, come back, and I came back. And unfortunately, that gentleman then had closed his company, so there was no job. And that's one of the reasons that I worked for the embassy. So because I didn't have a green card at that first time. It was a visitor's visa that I had.
Okay, so you actually came then to the to Washington D.C. and then you were employed by the British Embassy. Is that
Yeah, well,
correct?
in 1969, I came back. My sister, once my mother had passed away, my sister said, why don't you come here? It'd be better for you. So she had me come over. I came over on a visitor's visa, and the gentleman who had offered me the job when I was here on vacation had to withdraw it for whatever reason. So it would have meant at the end of 6 months, I would have to have left and gone back to the UK. And it just so happened a friend of my sister said, why don't you go to the embassy and see if they've got any jobs? And I did. So I went to the British Embassy and I got employed there in the visa section, of all things, just doing accounting for the visa section. And then I got an offer of a job with the Aussies, the Australian Embassy. So I went to work for them.
Okay, well, the fact that you had some connection with the British Embassy, is that how you started
With the
getting
British
with the British
players,
Embassy
yes.
players?
There was a Scottish lady who worked there, and she heard my accent, and she said, oh, where are you from? La, 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 la. And she said, what did you do in Glasgow? And I said, oh, did some theatre. Oh, we've got a theatre group, she said. You have to join. So in September 1969, I joined the British Players.
Now, and did the embassy players, because I think that was what they were called
The
initially,
British
did they
Embassy
actually,
Players. They were the British Embassy Players.
right, and they performed at the British Embassy?
Performed at the British Embassy, yes, exactly.
Okay.
But then when and the 9/11 thing, they didn't allow people in anymore, so we couldn't have audiences, we couldn't build our sets and everything. So that's when we moved to Kensington, where we are now, and became the British Players. So I've been with them since 1969.
And as you started out in the early days of the British Embassy players, before they became the British players, were there any particular roles that you played early
Oh
on?
yeah, I did lots of pantomimes for them and dramatic roles. Night of the Burning Pestle, which most people wouldn't know because it's a Shakespeare type role, and then of course that's where I started doing music hall. British Players do what we call an old-time British music hall every year in June. And I just joined, and I was in the chorus the first year that I was with them. And I can't remember who was directing that yet. A chap called Bernie Stainton in those days was the director of it. And he said, "Oh, I like your voice. I think you're funny, and you look funny." So he gave me a role with a friend called Willie Hanson, who was also Scottish, and we sang a couple of Scottish songs. And then he gave me a comedy number to do, and people responded to it. People laughed, and he said, "Oh, you got to stick to comedy. You're very good at it." So I mean, I have facial expressions, and people would laugh. Just wouldn't have to say anything. I'd just look at them a funny way, and they'd laugh. So that's how I got busy with them. And then I directed a couple of plays for them too. So.
Albert, tell us a little bit more about music hall. Is that something that actually is popular in the UK and they were doing it here because it was part of the
Oh,
British players? Tell us a little bit more about that.
it was well. It's very. I mean, the easiest way to explain it to Americans is it's like vaudeville. It's a whole series of individual numbers and chorus numbers. Of course, they added kick line, a bunch of girls in, short tights and doing a kick line and chorus numbers, 8 to 10 people would be in the chorus and what have you. It's basically, it's like vaudeville. It's the British version of vaudeville. And it was very, very popular in the UK. I mean, most towns had a theatre that specialised in music hall, old-time music hall. In fact, they even had a television programme for many years from Leeds that actually once a week it was on, and it was literally in a theatre with everyone sitting down and what have you. And the audience, the performers would come out and do their bit and piece and respond and act with the audience, draw them in, and they'd make them sing choruses and what have you. It really a very personable show. It's a fun show to do. Like I say, when you get a good response from the audience, it makes performing a lot easier, believe me, than just doing a straight play. But we also did straight plays and comedies. I mean, we did The Importance of Being Earnest, and Shakespeare, As You Like It. We did those. Players did all of that too.
And I before because I also want to ask you. You mentioned a moment ago about directing, but I also wanted you to share about pantomime because I think people have a different idea about what pantomime is, and it would be helpful for we in America, if we're not familiar with it, to talk about pantomime. What is that?
Well, Americans hear the word mime and they think it's a silent thing. It is not a silent thing at all. It's usually a story based on a children's fairy tale, a Cinderella, um, uh, what else? Babes in the Wood, things like that. And it's a show with lots of singing and dancing. You have a singing chorus, townspeople, peasants, what have you. You usually have a king and a queen. And then you have what you call the principal boy, who's played by a girl. And then the principal girl, they pair up. And then you're bound to have two or three. You've got one man dressed as a woman who plays, the mother, and it's really funny. Usually overly enlarged. and very heavily made up. And it's a children's story basically for adults. I mean, the kids love it, but it's got some, naughty bits in it for the adults. A lot of humor, a lot of singing, a lot of dancing, bright sets, I mean, village scenes and what have you. And it's just basically a fairy tale set to music with a lot of British comedy involved. So that's what it is. And no mime. There's no mime in it,
Albert, you talked about the characters that you played. Uh, Tell us a little bit more about your directing experience with the British players. What kinds of productions have you done, and did you like
Well, I
that?
actually,
Did you like that as well as acting, or about the same? What would you tell us?
Yes, it's a little more challenging because you're dealing with a lot of personalities and not just with a director. So it can be a little more challenging. But no, when you put together a show, you work with a set designer and a costumer and a cast to bring a production to fruition. It's very satisfying. Um, it's it's more satisfying in many ways than acting. Acting, you're restricted to one role and you try to develop personality for that role and work with your director, of course. But as you're directing, you're bringing all these individual characters together as a cast and telling the story. So yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, I actually had directed music hall a few times, which can be challenging also because you're working with an orchestra too, and a musical person who wants to play it as it's written and you want to maybe make a few changes. So uh, directing is very satisfying in many ways. It's a lot more challenging. You have a lot more work to do because you have to bring together all these individuals. You have to get the set done, the costumes done. So
Okay, well, we've covered the British players. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the community theater groups that you've participated in the DC area. What were some of the productions and what roles did you play? Any favorites?
oh yeah, I mean, for the Little Theatre, I've done work with the Little Theatre of Alexandria, the Allington Players, um, and with the Little Theatre of Alexandria, I've directed a couple of British comedies, but my favorite was they did a 100th anniversary of The Importance of Being Honest. It was actually the 100th anniversary of the opening of The Importance of Being Honest in London. So I put in to do it and they chose me and I did it and we had a damn good production, I have to say. It's one that I won an award for and there was a lot of good write-ups and
Congratulations.
oh, thank you. And the cast were really good to work with. LTA, they're a little more demanding. They have their own theatre and everything, which the players don't have. And they're a little more demanding, perfection. So it was challenging, but it was a lot of fun to do. And I had a fabulous costume designer and set designer. So the costumes were brilliant and the set was tremendous. And the cast were good, very good. And they really enjoyed what we're doing. They enjoyed getting the laughter, which is always important to an actor to get a response.
So, and I also understand that you were involved with some professional theater performances in the DC area. Talk about that.
Yeah, I've done professional theatre here in DC. I mean, when I was living in London, I went to London for a while, for 4 or 5 years, hoping to break into professional theatre. That didn't work out. But I did a couple of walk-on roles in operas and things like that. But here, yeah, I had a friend, Katie Fly. She had her own theatre company called the Interact Theatre Company. And she had seen me in music hall and she decided she wanted to do Down at the Old Bull and Bush, which is a music hall based in a pub. And I mean, very famous pub in the UK, in London, the Old Bull and Bush. And they always did an annual music hall. So we did that at the old Vat Room at Arena Stage, what used to be old Vat Room, which was the basement space at Arena Stage. And it ran for 71 performances, which was incredible, I mean, for a professional show. And so I also, again, not trying to get praise glory, but something happened that I never would have dreamed had happened. I actually got nominated for a Helen Hayes Award. I didn't win it, but I got nominated for it. And I couldn't believe it. That was my first professional production in DC, and I got nominated for a Helen Hayes Award. So,
Well, congratulations again. So, you mentioned now you get two awards. Any other awards that you?
oh, I've been nominated a few times for Watch Awards. That's the Washington Area Theatre Community. It's the community theatre in the area, Allington Players, Little Theatre of Alexandria, the Silver Spring Stage, etc. I did let's see, I did the Paris Penzance with them and played the Major General and got nominated for a Watch Award for that. And then I did Erroneous in Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum and got nominated for a Watch Award for that and won, uh, which again was, hey, this is great. I'm doing everything I love and I'm getting, praised for it. So, and yeah, so.
You've had a very distinguished career. And to that end, Albert, I was wondering, I'm assuming that because of the pandemic, you haven't been working. Are you planning to return to theater work after the COVID pandemic? And what would you like to do?
Yes, well, I've been doing, and much to my chagrin at first, but I quite like it. I do a lot of the set designs and set painting for the players. We perform at the Kensington Town Hall, and I designed a lot of sets for plays. And last year, in January, February, March, I designed and we were building the play for the audience, which is a play about the Queen and her prime ministers. And we were due to move the set to the theatre. We build it out in Glen Echo and we perform in Kensington. And we were arranging to move the set on the Friday. And that's when the pandemic really had begun to hit. And so they closed the theatre. Like they've done with all theatres. You can't perform, you can't have audiences. So we still have the set, and we hope and pray that come June of this year, the theatre will reopen and we can use the set and we can do the play. I mean, I don't know if we'll have to get a new cast or not, but it's like everyone else. All the other theatre community is closed, just like the professional theatres, but we're all looking forward to it. I'm just, looking forward to getting back, building sets, and perhaps doing music hall again.
Indeed. So, Albert, we're getting close to the end of the interview here. Just two quick questions. Any advice for viewers who think they want to break into acting?
Well, yes. I mean, you can't just go to an audition and walk in and get it. You have to establish yourself a little bit. I suggest if they're interested, they should join a local community theatre first and foremost. They're always looking for people, always, to either build sets, paint, usher, and perform. So that's the way I broke in. I started out, except for the school, but with the players, I went along to help build the set and ended up getting cast. And it's just gone on from there. I mean, that's the way to do it. There are a lot of things you can do to help, box office, front of house, and then break in that way. And go to auditions. Most theatre community theatres are like professional theatres. They have auditions. Now, going from there to professional is not as easy. There's lots and lots of wonderful, fine actors in DC, as many as there are in New York, and who have got good reputations. So you're going to be up against competition. So you better be sure that you know what you're doing as far as the audition. I mean, don't go trying out. If you're 70, don't think you're going to get a role for 40-year-olds. If you're short, you're not going to play the thin man. So yeah, look around, get the local community theatre near you. There's bound to be one. Fairfax, Vienna, everybody's got a local community theatre, and they all have websites. So you can get yourself put on the list for notifications of auditions and plays that are coming up, and you can volunteer for anything and possibly arrange for an audition. So
Good advice from the expert. So, Albert, in your lifetime, what are the accomplishments that you're most proud?
surviving, surviving through my teenage years on my own is one of my things. I think that helped me live the rest of my life and be happy with what I had. Making people laugh, that's been the biggest joy in my life. There's no way to explain what it feels like when people don't laugh at you, they laugh with you in a play. They laugh at you, what you do, but you're drawing them in. and wanting them to laugh. And I have to say, I performed for hundreds of people in the year, thousands over the years. And it's the laughter that's just absolutely makes you happy. And then I've had opportunities. I did the dresser with the British players and played Norman, the lead role, which is a very sad, tragic role. And what was wonderful for the week I did that was at the end of the show, when I had the last speech, there'd be absolute silence in the audience. And then you could hear people crying. And it was like, you've no idea what satisfaction that gives you as an actor to know that you can affect people like that.
Well said. I want to thank Albert Coia for joining me today. I hope this Stories of Life episode inspires you to think in new ways about your own life experiences. This program is broadcast Sundays at 5:30 p.m. and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. on Comcast Channel 69 or Verizon Channel 38 in Arlington, Virginia. We're also streaming live at those times in arlingtonmedia.org. Aging Matters is also on the radio every Tuesday at 2 p.m. on WERA LP Arlington 96.7 FM. And you can check out the Aging Matters website at agingmattersonline.com for all information about radio programs and TV episodes. Thank you for watching today's program. Please join me for the next Aging Matters. And until then, remember, age is just a number, not a label.